Greetings, this is Coach Fleischer, and we're Kinesiology 214, Module 3, Session 1. And this session in particular, we'll be talking a bunch about different types of program design philosophies, not trying to really reinvent the wheel or bury you guys in details, but just give you some exposure to different concepts and philosophies regarding program design. So this presentation is more about the main periodization phases. Now, periodization is a type of program design that helps to reduce the possibility of overtraining and reduce the possibility of injury while maximizing gains, specifically as a result of undulating rep and set combinations over time. So this model presents with, like in many other models that are out there, a cake kind of look to it. And the base of the cake is a hypertrophy phase. And that hypertrophy phase then lends to base strength, power, and peaking. Now, this model itself, you can overlay a couple concepts here, one of which is the process goes from general to specific, simple to complex, higher volume in the hypertrophy phase, lower volume in the peaking phase, lower intensity down here and higher intensity here. And if you're somebody who's competed in running or swimming, triathlons, you've heard the term taper. You know, you're trying to back off your overall training volume to get a training response and be very competitive. This model lends itself to not only planning on a macro scale over the course of multiple years for a competitive event, but it can be within the context of an entire training year, or it could be within the context of a competitive season where you have a higher volume in the beginning of your season and you work towards peaking for a particular sport event. Running for nationals, wrestling for nationals, whatever might be, baseball playoffs. Your goal is to build through this cake model to a competitive event. Not used so much in terms of preparing on a Monday for an event on a Friday. It's a little bit bigger picture than that. So it's usually like a 12-weeker, maybe 8-week type of philosophy here. But what I hope is with your clients, it gives you a different philosophy on how you can actually work with them. I tried to break this out in a way that made a little bit better sense than just the cake model. And so when you look at this across the top, you have hypertrophy, base strength, power, peaking, which is what you saw in the cake earlier. Now this could be a 12-week program or a 12-month training philosophy. It's not going to be a 1 week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It just doesn't work that way. And so I broke this out more in terms of like a 12-month type of program. So you have early off-season training, middle off-season training, late off-season to early preseason, and then preseason, in-season, then you have late in-season to a competitive event. Remember, driving towards a goal like a competitive event like nationals or regionals or sectionals, whatever that might be. But over time, as you progress from that hypertrophy through base strength, you go from a higher volume environment with lower intensity, with general movements that are simple in nature, to a lower volume, higher intensity, more specific movement patterns and more complex movement patterns. And it kind of makes sense, right? Because if you're in season, there's literally nothing more specific to a sporting event than the event itself. I mean, I can have you throw all kinds of medicine balls through this phase and swing against bands, etc. But until you get on a tennis court, it's not as specific as it can be. And I often guide my clients with this. When we start talking about different types of training and programming, of course, we can do all kinds of torso rotation activity. But unless we're applying that and trying to connect the dots between what we're doing in the gym to the driving range, it will not connect to the golf course. Same thing with baseball. You have to connect the dots to be able to translate the skill set. So as you go through this, there's a bit of coaching art that goes into this process of knowing the rep and set combinations, knowing the actual training volume that you want and the intensity, what type of movement patterns you want, and then to what degree in terms of rep and set combinations do you want to actually apply that stimulus to get the training response. So it's a process, there's no doubt, but just keep this simple model in mind, going from that hypertrophy phase to base to strength to power to peaking. And in weightlifting terms, this will be a higher volume, lower intensity, and conversely over here it's lower volume, higher intensity, and we'll see that here in a second. The model itself can be applied in the general population insofar as, for God's sakes, if you're doing 3 sets of 15 with your clients all the time, stop. Just stop now, because that's like your client eating oatmeal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner all the time. They're going to get bored with it. Their body will actually adapt initially to that training stimulus that you're placing on it, but it'll only adapt so far. So it's key, it's crucial that you go ahead, not only for your clients, but also for your business, because a bored client is not going to be a client for long. You need to find ways to take your clients from 3 sets of 15 all the time and drag them through these different phases from hypertrophy to base to strength to power to peaking, and find ways to progress and regress them across this cake model, whether it's just rep and set combinations, or you go ahead and do so with different exercise selection over the course of a year. A great example is you might have 2 months where you're focusing primarily on dumbbells, and then you make a transition where you focus on barbells, or perhaps you focus on strength training equipment. You can use those as tools, your exercise selection, but you can overlay that with a higher rep environment and progressing over 8 weeks to maybe 10 weeks or 12 weeks to where you go to a lower rep environment, then you bring them back out to a higher rep environment. Your clients will love it when you do that with them. A little different from those from the prehab rehab population because you're dictated by protocols for rehab, but in terms of working out with the general population, this is a very powerful tool that you can use in your programming to keep your clients from becoming bored and also reducing the possibility of overtraining while maximizing their gains, 100%. So I'm going to take a few moments here just so you know. I'm going to pull in some concepts from the previous lectures. I'm also going to do a little foreshadowing. That's a teaching thing, and I hope somewhere in here you go, man, that guy's a good teacher, because I'm looking at foreshadowing a couple concepts on the next couple of slides, and I hope it helps you to kind of like be able to calculate and evaluate workloads and quantify a few things as we go through and talk about this model just a little bit further. So we'll be looking at an 8-week linear periodization program. By linear, what's inferred here is the loading parameters don't undulate and go from heavy to light to low to light to heavy to light to medium. It's pretty much linear where you go a week of 10, a week of 8, a week of 6, a week of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In other programming, you can undulate that to get a training response, and you see that with your more advanced people. This is a pretty straightforward, simple 8-week linear periodization program. And by periodization is that method I mentioned earlier, where it is the systematic vacillation of rep and set combinations over time, and you're doing so to elicit a training response, but do so while minimizing injury and also minimizing boredom. Now, if we look at this, and I brought this guy over here so you can kind of compare these two side by side, you look at this linear progression over time. We start on week 1 down here. We're doing sets of 10, then we're doing sets of 8, then sets of 6, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 over an 8-week program. And I left the weeks off here because I thought it was kind of confusing in terms of having the weeks over here on the side. We're doing all sets of 4. Well, you know, if you do 4 sets of 10, it's 40 reps. If you do 4 sets of 8, it's 32, and et cetera. You can follow that math right up to where you're doing 4 sets of 1 for 4 reps. The coefficient, you may recall, 0.03 per rep for every rep. So 0.03 times your 10 reps, your percentage that you're working at is 30%, 24%, 18%, et cetera. And the percent workload you're working at then corresponds to reps of 1 at 97%. Now, we did talk about how that's a sliding scale, and that Epley formula gives you a little different number, but for the sake of our class and to keep things simple, we stuck with 0.03, and we stuck with your touchstone on this is sets of 10 are always 70%. And you can adjust that during different training programs. But what I want to get across is this. As you go through this 8-week program, what do you see? You see sets of 10 for overall volume is higher here during this hypertrophy-based strength phase. And as you go through, the volume drops off as you go towards the peaking phase. Conversely, the percentage you're working at, the workload, is 70% during the hypertrophy phase, and it drops, it goes up as you go towards the peaking phase. So there is that very classic inverse relationship between the amount of volume and the amount of reps a person can do in any particular set. And that volume overall and the reps in a set and the percentage workload are very, very highly tied together. And we're talking, it is a high correlation between those. You simply can't do 4 sets of 10 at 97%. It's counterintuitive. So you see this here graphically. If we were to put on a chart, you know the percentages got higher as you've gone through. You know the volume decreased as you went through the program. All right? I hope that helps. Now, if you look at this, and this will be kind of food for thought going forward, because then you start having this conversation of, well, what is actually a hard workout, right? Is 4 sets of 10, which is 40 reps, a hard workout, or 4 sets of 1 at a higher percentage, a harder workout? And so you look at this and you go, okay, 1 set of 4 would give you 4 reps, but that's, like, shoot, 88%. So if I'm looking back at this and I'm going, okay, I'm doing sets of 4, I know my sets of 4 are done at 88%. If we do the math on that, well, shoot, 88% at 176 pounds. If we calculate off of a 200-pound max, and you look at that and you go, okay, I'm doing 176, and it gives me 74 pounds of total tonnage. Is that a hard workout? Would 4 sets of 10 reps or 3 sets of 10 reps at 70% yield a harder workout? And I'm going to leave you with that one to kind of stew on a little bit. And you look at it in terms of trying to weigh what is an easy, a medium, a hard, or very hard workout for your clients or your athletes. Remember, this is all about applying a training stimulus. So I urge you to go back to this in the lecture notes and kind of weigh this out, right? Would 40 reps at 70% be a hard workout, or would 4 reps at 97% be a harder workout? You know you're moving more total tonnage over here, for sure, right? Versus here. So the trade-off is, and you'll see this later on, is when you get into the lower rep ranges with the higher percentages, it's skewed a little bit because actually the maxes that those numbers are based off of are higher. And so the total tonnage becomes quirky in terms of, you have to look at it in terms of relative tonnage. How much weight you're actually moving specific to the person. So pound for pound, if you recall Antoine Thrift, he was so strong that he moved pound for pound more weight than my offensive lineman, Sully. It becomes a relative strength game. And that is something that's going to be further down the road, but that's some pretty high level stuff, and it's fun to talk about, at least for me. It can be a little bit mind-numbing, but I'll do my best to keep it simple. So I hope this helps in terms of being able to map out some rep and set combinations for your clients. Keep in mind what's key to this whole process. You keep it simple. You progress them through that periodization model from hypertrophy to base strength to strength to power to peaking. You can't go wrong. And you can progress your clients back and forth across that. Over time, they will love you for it and get great results. With that, everyone, I'm signing off. Have a good one.